Okay, so we continue our discussion of the revised Bloom's taxonomy. And we finished this earlier, the original Bloom's taxonomy, which had knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. So after 45 years, David Crotwell, a student of Bloom, and Lauren Anderson formed a new group and worked together to revise the Bloom's taxonomy. Okay, so what's the difference? The original Bloom's taxonomy's terminology used nouns to describe the levels of thinking, like knowledge. Okay, here on the other side, the revised Bloom's taxonomy uses verbs to describe the levels of thinking. So it's no longer nouns but verbs. And in structure, we see that the old Bloom's taxonomy only had one dimension, from knowledge up to evaluation. Now, the revised Bloom has two dimensions, which you will see later on. And emphasis was originally for educators and psychologists, and now emphasis is placed upon its use for more authentic tool for curriculum planning, instructional delivery, and assessment. So it's more comprehensive. uh. So you see, in terms of the first dimension, we see here the difference. No? So before it was knowledge, now, which is a noun, and now it's a verb, remember. Comprehension is now understand, application, apply, analysis, analyze, synthesize was moved up, and the word create was used, and evaluation is now lowered to the second to the last, and of course, it uses the verb evaluate. Okay, so this is the revision. In terms of the first dimension, no, you notice that knowledge here is now remember, and knowledge now takes a new or a second dimension in the in the taxonomy. Okay, and we will see that later. Okay, so this is now the new remember, understand, apply, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. And they have their own verbs that are related to it. Okay, and as we said, it's no longer just this one dimension, but you will see now there are two dimensions. So this is remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. This forms the cognitive process dimension. Okay. And as I've mentioned, knowledge is no longer here, no? Because it creates an additional second dimension. And because we look at knowledge as something that is not part of the cognitive process, but it is the object. No, what do you remember? It's information, it's knowledge. What do you try to understand? What do you try to apply? So this is not really a cognitive process, but the object of this cognitive dimension. So when we say knowledge, knowledge can be factual, like basic elements. Knowledge can be conceptual, where we just had a lesson on concept formation. There is already interrelationships among basic elements. That's why from a fact, it now becomes a concept. Okay? Procedures, on the other hand, entails how to do something. Remember, procedural knowledge? We discussed this when we discussed information processing, that there are different kinds of information or knowledge. And then the last one is knowledge of cognition. You know, metacognition, no? It's thinking about what you are thinking. It is reflecting about what you are thinking and what you are learning. Okay, so now you are able to combine the cognitive dimension with the knowledge dimension. So if you are planning your lesson plan, writing your objectives, what do you want the students to remember? Do you want them to remember facts? That's listing. Do you want them to remember concepts? That is recognizing, no? To recognize something uh, with a collection of information about that thing. No? That's why the person has a concept. Do you want them to remember a procedure? Okay. Or do you want them to remember reflection? No? And what they think of something, no, what they feel about something. That is metacognitive, the reflection of something. Okay, maybe we can try, no, and again this summarizes the differences of the two. You can go back to each one of these as we have the PowerPoint in our account, in our Moodle account. Okay, so again, this is what I was explaining to you earlier, from lower order thinking skills to higher order thinking skills. So there's remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. That is the cognitive aspect. So I placed this table here so that you would have more details if you want to go back to it, go back to the PowerPoint, or replay this video lecture. And then the other one now, as I've mentioned, talks about the knowledge dimension. So from concrete knowledge to abstract, from a simple fact to a collection of facts or concepts to procedures to metacognitive knowledge. So then you have subcategories here. Are they terminologies, or are they details or elements? Are they classifications and categories? Are they principles and generalizations? And so forth. So this is how knowledge becomes so complex and moves to becoming more abstract. And this one is what cognitive process, what do you want your learner to do with the knowledge? Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, or create. So that's how it goes, no? So again, we have this. So it's always a combination of what you want the learners to do, what cognitive process, and then what are they working with? Are they working with facts? Are they remembering facts? Are they applying procedures? Are they applying concepts? Okay, so this is the representation. Maybe we'll try if this works. No, we'll go to the website of Iowa State University, and they have a very interesting way you can manipulate the 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 symbol, I mean the paradigm, and you can use it to understand it more. And we'll try to see how it goes. Okay. So this is from Iowa State University, and so we have here um, the the paradigm again. So if we say facts, so you can just like hover the mouse there. So it tells you what factual knowledge is, the basic elements students must know. Okay. And these are again the skills, the cognitive processes. Do you want them to retrieve relevant knowledge? That is remember. Do you want them to construct meaning from messages? That is understand. Do you want them to carry out something? No? And that is applying it. Do you want them to break down material? Remember, we discussed this earlier. That is analyzing. Do you want them to evaluate? That is making judgment. Do they like something? Do they agree with it? Do they think it is effective, efficient? And lastly is to create. That is to put the elements together to form a coherent or functional whole, to create something original, to create from the patterns that they understand and that they perceive. So that is from simple, lower level thinking to higher order thinking. And then you go down, and then you now consider the knowledge dimension. Is it just factual, conceptual, procedural, or metacognitive? And then they interact. So if you want them to remember facts, so an example would be list primary and secondary colors. So that is remembering something factual. How about remembering concepts? So an example would be recognize the symptoms of exhaustion. Okay. Or do you want them to remember a procedure? So recall how to perform CPR. Or do you want them to remember something metacognitive? Identify strategies in retaining information. How will I remember this? Okay, I should use something like, okay, so that is metacognitive. And then it goes, how do you understand a fact? When they summarize it, it means they understood it, no? Or understand the concept, so you'll be able to classify. We had a very interesting activity when you did your concept defining features and all of that exemplars. So it really made you classify, um and define things, no? So it showed what your concept is, like of a frog or the moon, no? And I really saw what level you understood, because classification is under understanding concepts. And it goes on, like apply a procedure would be what? To carry out. Because if you apply a procedure, it means you're going to actually do it. But you see here, it's just remember a procedure, so you just recall it. Here, you carry it out. You see? How do you analyze a procedure? You integrate, no? You integrate. If there are several procedures, you know that you're analyzing it, what would work, what would can be eliminated, and therefore you can integrate, no? How one can comply with new regulations. So it's like that. How do you apply metacognition? You use the techniques that match your strengths. So after thinking about it, it's just in your head. I plan to do this. I will be better if I do this. But if you don't apply it, then it's just there in your mind. But when you apply it, you actually use the techniques that you reflected about, that you think will be good for you. Okay? So be sure you visit this site here and use it to review the knowledge dimension of the revised Bloom and the cognitive dimension, and that will help you review and understand. And later on, as you make your own lesson plans and you try to do objectives from these different levels of cognitive and knowledge dimension. Very, very interesting. Okay, so and then this is another way. If you can't use that, you're not online, you just download this, and you see, when you remember facts, you list, and when you understand concepts, you classify. When you understand procedures, you're clear on it, you clarify, no? And you predict. So these are the key verbs that that signal what level of cognitive process and what level of knowledge dimension. So this is useful in doing your objectives in your lesson plan. This is useful in thinking of activities. No, I should have an activity where they would classify, because this is what I want them to do, understand concepts. So I'll have an activity that will make them classify, or I will have an activity that will make them carry out something and apply a procedure, and therefore carry out something. No? So you see, this is really the guide of a teacher who knows what he or she is doing inside the classroom. Okay? So here are different apps, and you can actually explore them because they will help you identify activities that you can do if you want your learners to simply remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. So this is also in our book. We added this in the book, and I'm sure that for now, I mean, this one is for iPad, but there's also one for Android, apps in Android, and you go ahead and try them, and um, how you can integrate technology when you teach later on. Okay. So again, just to summarize, the taxonomy provides a common set of terms and levels about when you do your learning outcomes or your learning objectives. So it really helps you think about it and formulate it, no, and formulate them. And then as a whole, it helps in drafting the whole curriculum. What do we really want our learners to know and be able to do and to value? No, and the levels we're able to do it in increasing levels of difficulty and complexity because we are guided by the taxonomy. And as I have mentioned, it also serves as a guide in assessing and evaluating your learners. So you see, when you are a teacher who is very intentional, very systematic, you don't just give a test because you got angry. You don't just give a quiz because you got mad. You There is really an intentionality to it, and also what are the questions that you are asking in your assessment. No, of course they should match what were the things that were discussed and the activities that were done in your class, and they're all guided by the taxonomy. Okay, so of course we place here the URL so you can also link them up again and see them again. Okay, so that's all about Bloom's taxonomy. Anyway, we'll have activities in our classroom about this and have more chance to apply it.